All right, hello. I have one toy chicken in my hand and nothing in my ass. And now that that's done with, let's get into something more serious. Okay, so I want to pick up from a previous discussion regarding topics like I've brought into the discussion The Boys, the, the Amazon Prime TV series, the nature of corporations, nationalism, fundamentalism, and market economies like capitalism. And I wanted to, there's two ways I can take this. Probably the, the, um, like, the high road is to delve into the mystery of God. And so, and the low road is probably where I'm going to take it and then hopefully jump back on the high road, which maybe I won't, I'll forget that I even said this, as I've done this many times before. But like the high road would be like, okay, you have corporations, market economy, banking, money, and how money is at first, like at least it appears to be eschewed by God, only to have God replaced by money, where God is our money is our God, and God is now our money, and that's something to really explore. Well, before I get to the high road, let's stick with the low road. So the low road, again, the Homelander of the Boys and how he represents um, the product of, like, say, the market economy, capitalism, and how he 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 creates a God complex. He's a president. He thinks he's God, and it sounds like somebody that we all know and love. uh, Donald Trump is pretty much acting like this. And after I made my previous recording, my latest recording, I saw an image that I think he posted on his TikTok of him as a superhero. Like he's like the Homelander. So he's totally, like now he thinks he's like a Marvel character, like, or like at least like Homelander. I wonder if he even knows who Homelander is. Anyway, so this is the low road that I wanted to take before I get into the high road. So to continue, um, I did ended on some kind of note regarding like communism, quoting Karl Marx. Something about from every man according to his ability, to everyone according to their needs. And again, it's another thing I like to do is like remember what that is and take out your Bible. And especially in the New Testament, there's some passages in there that make you think that, wow, man, these people are more like socialists than capitalists. And you know, well, anyway, so again, that's another place to go, and that could be worth another hour or something. But again, let's stick to the slow road. So I want to like continue with where I left off with capitalism versus communism. I think, and I think some of it's staged. And so I don't think it's always been staged. I mean, there's some people who think that, like, going as far back as secret societies, Illuminati, and all that, they've been staging all this stuff. And Alex Jones had harped about things like that. And I just don't like the guy. You know, it, the whole Sandy Hook thing, and I just don't want to go there. And so the problem with people like that is because of his conspiracy theory. Like the one that bit him in the ass, and just his nature of doing things. It's like all conspiracy theories are now anathema. It's like you can't, and it's like I must be somewhat of a conspiracy theorist because I think that was an inside job, like say regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I'm 62, so it's kind of like, and I was born like 2 months shy of his, like I was born, I think it was like just so he was assassinated again. I don't have notes in front of me or anything. I'm just from my experience, from my remembrances. Like I was born September 1, 63. The same year he was assassinated. He was assassinated like 2 months, let's say, before or after. Uh, if it was November, it was like a couple of months after, right? So it's the same. It's like ballpark, and so um, getting annoying pop-ups, uh, and so um, that's probably where I have the spirit of like the idea that the spirit of like what I have about things is it was planted in me probably in the year of 63. And a lot of things happened in 63. And one is the end of, the Sir Lancelot himself. It's like he was like a knight of shining armor kind of thing of Camelot, and he was assassinated, and the whole Arthurian context of the presidency in America was just totally wiped out. And I mean, ever since then, I think it's been downhill. That's my experience, and I think that if you're like half my age now, you should really look into this and and just sort of see how things panned out. You'd have to look at the culture, look at the attitude, the quality of innocence that was really not that innocent, and so all of it was thrown out with the bathwater, especially when Charles Manson, came out uh, and was out on, out, doing his things with his cronies, his little acolytes or followers or whatever, little drones doing the killings. And he's like, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do anything. And so he's a very interesting character. Anyway, so I'm digressing. So, anyways, so like, um, when he was assassinated, the this thing between communism and capitalism, I think by then it's like a thing that could be staged and exercised to benefit investors because it affects the stock market. And so I want to go back to like say Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So you have like the Great Depression. Things really crashed in 1929, I think it was. Get on top of my head here. Yeah, the big depression, and like that was the age of like say the Great Gatsby, the Roaring Twenties, and and stuff like that. And you had this like this collective of very rich people benefiting from unregulated Wall Street shenanigans. And this thing about like banks, and there's money in the banks, you could take that money and invest and throw that into the stock market and invest and you know take chances. And so people's money were being used for that because there was no Bank Act. You have this 1933 Bank Act, Glass-Steagall, I think it is. And so that was like a firewall between our average working person's money in the banks and like money that are also in stocks and trades and investing. And so that shit collapses. This money is intact. That's what you have post 1933, I think, roughly. And so that's one of the things that was put in place when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I think was like penning, crafting the New Deal. And I think there was like three New Deals. And so um, stock market crashed. And I think also there was like the Dust Bowl, like you have like your Grapes of Wrath scenario, like John Steinbeck. And so the interesting thing about that is because this is kind of like dealing with communism and all that, and like so like and capitalism. Um, so like he wrote like so you have people like that are out in the streets, they're starving, they're homeless now because they lost everything, because you have the stock market thing, but in this case it's the Dust Bowl, right? Grapes of Wrath kind of thing. And so they never saw themselves as part of the proletariat. They never saw themselves as proletariats, which is what we are, for the proletariat class, the communist type, you know, terminology here. So they, no, 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 we're Americans, we're capitalists, we're temporarily embarrassed millionaires. Okay, that's what, Steinbeck was saying, and it's true. It's like we still. So I think we still have this attitude, and so if you do, that's what I'm saying. You're brainwashed. You don't even know who you are. You're still like you're less than human. If you don't know who you are, you're less than human. You're like another animal. You know, does the bird that hits your window, like sometimes birds hit my window, before it does it, you stop it. Hey, do you know who you are? Bites you. the, the birds, Alfred Hitchcock, it's like, eh, eh. We're our job is to know what the fuck we are. I think that's if we are put here by some kind of higher power, and we have something going on between our ears, here like I think therefore I am kind of thing, and like the famous saying, if it was said by Socrates or not, the whole other thing is think know thyself. I think we don't know ourselves. And so, like, and we still though. I mean, we know maybe more than we did before the scientific revolution. Okay, fine. I still don't think that's enough. So, anyways, so if you think that you are a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, I change that to temporarily embarrassed billionaire. I mean, you're a fool. Problem is, um, you could still make some money if you sell your soul. You literally have to sell your genuine self, or just to think about hustling and making money. And you could do it. There's a lot of seminars, a lot of things. You can go to those like like was it Tony Robbins? And he has some guy that works with him or for him, and they try to hit me up for like the idea is like their whole thing is their whole pitch is we'll help you make money, and they guise it under like the umbrella of like, hey, make a business, like what the fuck are you even making? The whole purpose is to make money, which I understand when in Rome, but like so anyways, and I might be making more money soon, but that's again because uh don't you know? I mean, come on, But so going back to the Roaring Twenties, you have like this, perfect storm with, including the Dust Bowl and all that. But it's the stock market, and it was not regulated. And so after the shit hit the fan, certain things were put into place. FDR and his cronies, I understand this like this. There were people who were familiar with Marxism in the United States. And they're all like, and the whole thing about the unions and stuff like that. And I mean, it was getting pretty bad. And so like FDR was like, um, America is going to fail. Capitalism is it's falling apart at the seams. From what I understand, like I read books, I looked at history channels on YouTube, and I was in school. I went to college. I had American government, and certain things. I had this guy, Mr. Dora, who taught us American government in high school, and these are things that were brought up just to kind of keep the kids interested. And he drew every single president. He was able to draw really. He was a cool artist. He drew all the different presidents. He hung them all around his classroom. It was dedicated, and it's like I was probably the only one who was like, oh wow. And I got into drawing. Here's some of my art over here. They're not the presidents, but like airbrush. I'm learning. I just started learning airbrush like since March, and so I'm getting some headway. Anyways, again I digress. So and these are test run videos, and they don't even look good. I mean, this is how I look like, and I kind of have a pot belly, like dead belly kind of. Oh, wait, I could, you know, but I'm just like, so what, you know? Let's get down with it. Let's get down with it. Let's get down to business here. So like, deregulated Wall Street, and so like, um, public and private money is there's no difference, private banks, and so we're in the middle of this, and a lot of people moved from being more self-sufficient to moving into the cities. This is before the 20s, and in like the 1800s, to build up these these concentrated uh, population numbers in society, like in New York and Boston and Los Angeles. People just started, especially the East Coast. People were like gathering up there because those are big cities. That's where you work for the man and you take home a paycheck. And the assembly lines were all worked out. I mean, you have Henry Ford in Detroit. The assembly lines. He perfected this thing. The union started because people were dying and children were working, and there was no fire escapes. There was no guaranteed like set of hours. You just got to keep working. Well, I still can't pay rent. Well, work some more. And you're working all the time. Your whole life is just to work. Where before, when you were living without the dust bowl, like hopefully there's no drought. Before that, you weren't working as much. People think that when you have a farm, well, okay, I'm not a farmer. I never farmed, but like if you have, like a close knit family and a bunch of acres of land, and everyone's dedicated and everyone's doing their part, I don't think you're going to have to work like they did as hard as they did in the assembly line in the United States before the 1900s. I just don't think so. Somebody, could say, well, you're wrong. Here are the points of contention with that, and blah blah blah. But I would go back to the Middle Ages and say, no, 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 no. I mean, those people probably worked 6, 7 months out of the year, and they had a lot of time off. If you were to do the math in terms of breaking it up in units of like days, you know, it's kind of like checkered. It's not like 6 months work and the 6 months completely doing nothing. No, it's every month they're doing stuff, but it's not like every freaking fucking day, 360, 4 days or 5 days a year, all the time. Unless you have a corrupt king and the king's like saying, no, you can only work for me, and you can't sell your own cows. It has to be through me, and I'm the one who has to I get to sell everything, and you have to work through me and for me, and I in turn pay you a little. And that's the beginnings of capitalism and the market economy that we have today. It started by corrupt kings, and I have to look up examples. But other kings were not as corrupt. Like the Magna Carta guy. It's like, yeah, all of this, royal forest is for you to come in and you could use. And I don't know. I'd have to look that up. Maybe there's another name for it. Again, I digress. But anyways, so it's you have bad people ruining a system, and then the system gets blamed. And I think someone can say that for capitalism, but I'm not going to go that route. So deregulated Wall Street. So that's an example of like how capitalism fell short. And so FDR was like, if I don't um, use buzzwords that signify communism, we're gonna lose everything. And so that's what socialism, like social security is about. So social security. So that was put in place, with the New Deal, and it's like, hey, you work for a company X number of decades, or I don't know, and now you're getting older, and so you don't have to work anymore. Now that money you put in to the government, it comes back to you in the form of Social Security and Social Security. They could have used another word. They could have called it something completely different that didn't have the word socialism or anything like that in it. And the reason why they chose Social Security was because it sounded socialist or communist, and so there's enough of those people around to affect their policies and the names of said policies. And so another one is the Bank Act of 33, where you got to separate banks and people's public money with the private. Like the public, no, the public is what you can use in Wall Street. Private is like, I think, see, again, let's look it up. Let's double check. It's like your money is not to be used in public, like in Wall Street, where people can just you know gamble on it, the interest and all, whatever. Like I don't know, that was in the details. I don't know all the details, but it's just that like now there's a firewall to keep people losing all their savings in the bank. So when Wall Street fails, the banks fail, and you use their money. And that's what it is. So before 1933, when Wall Street completely plummets, the banks plummet, and then you work at a farm, you work at a silo, or whatever. Where's my hard-earned savings? It's gone. Why? Because the system collapsed. I didn't have anything to do with it. I worked every day and put my money in there for like 3 decades. Where's my money? It's gone. Well, then FDR and all those guys like, okay, no. Well, if that happens again, you're gonna have some of your money there because that's gonna be firewalled from what these people are doing in Wall Street. With their little funny top hats and you know, whatever. Octogenarian you octogenarian you're the reason for all this mess. Your funny hats and your canes and your, you know, I want my demi-tasse, and so like and when everyone was starving in the 30s, like the 20s, and the movies they were putting out in Hollywood, they always had these people in these big mansions. And you have like these black servants, yeah, the Shirley Temple, and yeah, and they did, and like there's always these big houses where these people all dressed nice. It's like yeah, because you watching this don't have any of this shit. In the movies, you go to the movie, the theater, you're like, yeah, you don't have any of this shit. So it takes you into a fantasy world, yeah, where people live in big houses. That you don't live in a big house, you live in a fucking hole, You fucking working for the man. I mean, you fucking look at it, man. So after that, the 30s comes in and kind of repairs. By the 40s, yeah, then we have like World War II and all that. But like we're a powerhouse, and part of that is because of the war, and so we had to like put our efforts in the war. We made money off the war, made a lot of money off the war. I think that's what really helped make America quote unquote great again. So by the 50s, man, you're really having it. But the reason why you go back to the FDR type days, New Deal, they had to use momentary lapse of, you know, capitalism and institute communism. And I'm sorry, Social Security is communism, socialism, and guaranteed work. So like they're like, we got to find jobs for people, and also promise guaranteed housing. So you have what are called the balloon framed. Look up balloon framed housing, and all these houses are now being built across the nation, and these billboards, and you know look it up. And it was like, wow, we're really booming. We're really, and the throwaway houses, balloon frame houses, 2x4s, drywall and blah blah blah, and the installation and the bricks, and my dad was a carpenter. I kind of understand how to build stuff. I understand how that works. I haven't really done a lot of that. I just kind of know from the drawings and then the concepts behind. A wall is just not a freaking solid, rock, like solid wall. You have like instead of steel frame, you have wood frame, and you have like your bricks. You know, you have like, you have like it's a lining with insulation, wood, and then you have like drywall. But and then okay. Anyways, and so my dad used to take me when you go out and build houses and shit. For one of his jobs, he had like, two jobs, but for Ford, and he also did carpentry. He laid terrazzo. So even in the 70s, it wasn't so easy for the average working man. He worked all the time. But my mom didn't have to work if she didn't want to, although she did sometimes, outside of being a home mom. So the you go back to the 1930s after the 20s, so you have deregulated capitalism. Now it's being curved off, leveled off by some communism. And so we were somewhat more communist as a socialist during and after FDR. And then what's funny is we were friends with Russia, and we were able to beat the Axis, was the Axis of evil, the Axis powers, of Japan and Russia, Japan and Germany, right? And then we backstabbed Russia after, after we won. Then it's like all of Europe, and the United States, all let's all like, now then we push Russia away and we distance Russia from us. And yeah, you could say it's because Stalin was a monster, okay, fine, but I think it's more than that. Because like you gotta understand, if the Great Depression didn't happen in the 20s, we'd still want to live like that. And then you would not have Social Security, you would not have guaranteed work, you would not have access to clean water or like fire escapes and access to like, doctor medical care and all that. All these things were hashed out because of FDR, but it was reactionary. We had a disaster happening, which was the Great Depression and that. And so now we have to, um, patch up all the problems, all the leaks. And so, and I think you have uh, the hidden elephant in the room is the stock market. How is the stock market being affected? So after this happened, if you're like somehow pitching some kind of a thing where it's going to benefit the average person, and it's going to be a like people are going to want to consume this for a while, and it's like they're going to be happy with what they're going to consume. Oh, I'm going to invest in your company. The customer is always right, kind of a thing. Well, what was it like during 1918? I don't think it was customer was always right. Everyone who was poor was, everybody except for the elite, had colorful, the elite had colorful things to wear, but the everyone else is all brown and black and white and dingy. They didn't have all these beautiful things. I'd be surprised. Then again, I'm looking at black and white footage. I'm just, throwing it out there, like so. Um, all the stuff that you have now, only a small group of people had that. Like if you smoke now, a long time ago, it was just, rich people that had access to smoking, unless you're a Native American and they smoked out of the pipe. It wasn't pot, it was like tobacco, you know. And so like anyway, so now again I'm bumping around. So like post depression, things seem more like inclusive. And I wonder if DEI actually happened because of FDR. It's like you kind of trace it back to FDR and all that, and then you also have like you know the unions, working, class, from unions, and you have suffrage, like suffrage in the city. You have like women being able to vote, women's rights, all these things. It became more um, like the Democrats started to form like, yeah, I'm for that. And then so that's how they can get constituents, and certain businesses would follow that model. And so when I was born in the 60s, I kind of saw, I thought that was kind of like the the going thing. Yeah, you watch Sesame Street, and so like, and I go, this is normal. Now they got rid of PBS, they got rid of Big Bird, and it's like because the right wing government the thing that Frank Zappa warned us against, the Christian theocracy and the fascist kind of thing, is taken over. And they look what they did. They got rid of Sesame Street. A little bit too commie for them. So what they say is, oh no, it's DEI or whatever. No, they're just saying it's commie. You're a you're a commie, you're a commie, you're a commie. So they get rid of all that red stuff. And it's ironic because they're red, red versus blue. Okay, again, I'm digressing. You so look at it this way. So, but like, I think that the powers that be, are dealing with like the money sector, and so um, when you have Carter as president, it's kind of like it's stagnant. It's kind of like, yeah, we're kind of sick and tired of this inclusiveness, this whole thing about the customer is always right, and we have like unemployment lines. I mean, they had money. You can get money if you're unemployed. You can get money because that's kind of like a Franklin Delano Roosevelt thing. And the idea is, yeah, they keep you out of, the streets. You still get to keep your residence because eventually you're going to find another job and you're going to be able to consume, and you keep the whole invisible hand thing of Adam Smith going. And I like Bernie Sanders would say I'm kind of like a New Deal guy. If I were to get into politics, it just makes sense to me. Like Bernie Sanders, if you see him with a full head of hair, talking to, whoever back in the 70s, he says the exact same things as he does now. Same, he's not changed. Trump, he's changed. Unless he pretended to be one way, but he's really the other way. So maybe he didn't change. But anyways, um, and so Bernie Sanders tells the truth, and he can't get in edgewise. He can't make a presidency. Donald Trump lies, and he makes gold. Like Hitler. Hitler lied. He makes gold. And I think all the religions, they tell you a lie and they make gold because we need to be lied to. Here's an example of why I think we have to be lied to. I learned this from um, the editor of Skeptic magazine, and His last name is Shermer. His first name Mike Shermer. I used to watch a lot of debates regarding creationism versus evolution, or it's religion versus you know um, atheism. And Shermer said that our species survived a lot when we kind of looked like Lucy, short, like 4 foot hairy, ape type, you know, really pre-human ancestor, like somewhere in the savannas, somewhere in Africa or whatever. And uh, so imagine that and other hominids that are not completely connected to our immediate bloodline. I submit that they're still pre-human. We have like 8 of them or 13 of them. I forget the number of they have Australopithecine and Homo habilis and Homo erectus and Giganticus, Australopithecus robustus. I took anthropology, and that's proof. I know what I'm talking about. Like I'm kind of rusty because the stuff that when I took anthropology was back in the 80s. There's a lot of changes, and stuff. But they still think that we evolved, and it started in Africa, and the human race spread out from Africa. It's not like, oh no, we were wrong, and we actually, the Earth is like 10,000 years old, and we're completely wrong. No, they just get some of the numbers wrong in terms of the dates, and they always roll it back a little. It's actually another million years old, or maybe a half a billion. They always that's what they do. And they find, oh, we found another hominid line that we didn't know. So the number is 14. So that's the new discoveries that they're making. And like, we found an older cave painting than the other ones. And this one's in Spain, okay, not France. Okay, I get it. That's like, more up to date kind of shit. Made by Neanderthals. It's fascinating. Anyway, so like, what was I saying? So like you have like these 4 foot tall type like Lucy, Australia, Africanus afarensis. I think that's going back to when we were like, and then you have some other ones. And so like these other ones, there's like something in the brushes, like the tall grass, and they kind of ignore it half the time. And then like, a lot of times a predator comes and just chomps their head off. Our immediate ancestral line, going back to more like 4 feet tall and all hairy like Lucy, discovered by Dr. Leakey and wife, Um, every there's any kind of movement in the tall grass, we're out of there like a bat out of hell. We won't even second guess. We're just fucking we're like skittish, like horses or cats. Like yeah, we're we are scaredy cats. Like we're skittish, and so we believed in something that they would not see. That's the dawning of believing in an invisible entity, and that could be the seed of creating the evolutionary advantage to religion. You see how the connection is made? That's a pretty brilliant idea, and that stuck with me. So, but it's a lie. There's nothing behind that bush. A lot of times it was just wind. But then you would say, well, no, because the other guys didn't think it was, and they got killed. So yeah, so it's kind of like a catch-22 kind of an argument. But you get the point. Not always was there something behind the grass, making the grass move. So we believe we have a so in a sense that we wire ourselves to need a lie in order to persist, subsist, and all that. So anyways, let's just stop there. So like what happens is during this 1970s with Carter, and then you have this thing with Iran, and we have the American hostages there. And there's a funny thing about Iran. Iran then was a problem. And like if you unpack the thing with Iran, it's always connected to Israel, which is another problem. And that whole Middle East thing became a problem because of the oil that was there, that was discovered by, I think it was Europe, and then we got in there. And so, um, and it's even in the Bible. Like people try to say that, like, the story of Isaac and Ishmael. Like Ishmael was given access to a lot of the land there, and then they will be they'll be a blessed tribe. And then eventually, when the British discover the oil, it's like, oh yeah, now you have these, the Muslims. Yeah, you see, we're blessed. So you can even use religion to defend that, God put that oil there, which I'm not going to go there. So there's a lot going on, and also you have the Gog and Magog. People tie that with the Middle East and with Russia, and so if you're religious, you can still feel connected to current events because Russia's involved and Iran, the Middle East is involved. And if you trace Iran back to the history of it, they're the Persians, and they fought against the Greeks. And then in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, he had a coin where it's like his head next to, like, and then you flipped a coin, or maybe you had a flag or a banner or some kind of poster. You have like Saddam Hussein. Then next to them you have Nebuchadnezzar. That guy is mentioned in the Bible, the Babylonian king. All these things are connected, but ultimately, it's just a struggle between capitalism and communism. Why? Because of how market economy works, and the stocks and trade, invest. So like what happens is, like with Trump, he every time he would say something about Iran going back over there, it would alter the stock market. And so if and I found this out yesterday, that Barron took advantage of the knowledge of what his dad was doing to invest in money just before Trump would do it, to make money in stocks and trades, because with Iran and the fighting therein, it affects the stock market, and they make money. And I thought about this, like, wait a minute, you have politicians, they get into office, and now they leave office with millions of, like, 500 million, approaching a billion, where before they might have had half a million when they first got into politics because of donations. Yeah, you might be a lawyer, but you're not going to have a half a million unless you've invested and you get donations. Now you're going to become a public servant. But the only person you're serving is yourself. And so it's like they all invest, they all have portfolios, and then you have these wars, and you have the global market, and you have the weapons industry, at a global scale. And the banks have to be involved. And you make something, you have to have the banks to finance it. And you need people who invest to making these things, investors, stock shareholders. And the stock market goes up and down accordingly. And so you bid, you sell by selling or buying, and that's how you make it. And so politicians, they wind up making bank because there's all these wars being waged, and some of that's connected to the stock market, and they are all investing, and so they're always making bank because they're anticipating the next move. They're the ones making the moves. They're the ones making the decision. And that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the capitalism versus communism thing. So, and that affects Wall Street. So what's happening is, so like now you have, Jimmy Carter, and there's like this sanguine kind of deflated thing about America and the economy, and like, the gas lines, and oh man, this thing with Iran, and oil embargo, and we're really fucked. And I think some of that's staged. And so, but we have that, and so, like, yeah, you can look at Iran before Iran in the 50s, like they were taken over by the United States and England, and they overthrew their government, and they put in their own guy. That's what caused all of the bullshit in the Middle East, focusing, centering around Iran. And then later on, you have Al Qaeda, you have Hezbollah and all that. We're responsible for stoking, the embers, starting this conflagration where, we got it because somebody discovered oil there, and push comes to shove. That's where this stuff kind of, and so Henry Kissinger, when he worked for Nixon, and he worked for a bunch of other people after Nixon, His strategy was the United States has to stoke, has to create confusion abroad, and so these people are all confused and they fight with each other. The United States are like they're okay, we'll sell you weapons, they make money. The other guy comes, yeah, we'll sell you weapons, we make money. And the stock market is, and then we invest in favor of our interest while all the instability is going on in the world, and we're making more money. Now, make no mistake, Russia's connected to parts of the Middle East. Russia is more of a friend to Iran than we are. And like Putin doesn't like, Putin and, like, it's like Putin and Netanyahu, like Putin gonna shake your hand up, side, that's kind of like the tension. And there's also tension between, like Netanyahu and Xi Jinping, uh, Xi Jinping of China. And so, anyways, so like up until like the time of Carter, it was kind of like pro-socialism mentality among as a show of faith. You could see it in Hollywood all the time, and you saw it in Sesame Street, and you saw it like in the stores, and the idea instead of, and I remember I you get things for free, like just because I went to this restaurant. Wow, now I get a meal for like half off. You know, eventually the whole birthday thing came in. You get your free meal. I think that might be a grandchild of that. Like the customer's always right, and like you get savings, and you get a job, and like you're a dad, and you work for Chevrolet, and then your son comes in, and your son, hey, yeah, let me introduce you to my son, and my son joins the company. The dad's retired, getting a pension. Pensions were a thing. And so it's like you have a company. Nah, we don't believe it. We don't have pensions for. Now, people want to work for you, and then who's going to invest in your company? So you have a big company, you have employees. The incentive is to take care of your employees. Still, they have to work, a lot, but they get the weekends off. They make it a yearly paid vacation. If you're kind of like lower management, maybe middle makes more. But the assembly line person, like my dad, he would get sick leave. He would, he had health insurance for all of us. He had a little bit of vacation time, and he had a big ass he had a pension when he was no he could retire. And so when you retired, then you had money coming in. You had a certain amount of stipends coming in because of Social Security, but not only that, because of your pension. And the companies that were built, where everyone was kind of like doing that, then well, they got rid of the unions, and they started like bringing the forging jobs, the factory jobs overseas, like to China, and that's what the capitalism is. That's like your venture capitalism. Now you have your Milton Friedman kind of shit, and it's so like, and you listen to that guy talk, and look at the comments, and you guys are all fucking ridiculous or brainwashed or something. He's pretty much saying what Ayn Rand says. Like this whole thing about handouts is like anathema, and it's like, only the strong survive and all this. Like, and then that bitch, she winds up getting like, you know, free medical care when her health declined. She was getting like free medical assistance, socialist like medicine. Well, no, hey, sorry, bitch, you got to write another fucking book. Oh, nah, you're a useless eater now. So I mean, the universe will fucking have the last laugh. I mean, that alone is like, well, then fuck this, man. So again, you really want complete freedom. Harpazo your ass to the Mojave Desert and see how you fucking do. And I'll strip you your ability to speak any language. When you like yeah, because you speak whatever language you got, right? That what that comes with it is how to process information and think. You didn't make up any of that shit. It was given to you. That's where you are. That's just what you are. If you don't know, you don't really know what the fuck you are. You don't even know who the fuck you are or what you are. We still don't. You got to really look in the mirror and really ask these kinds of questions. And so the 70s, that whole thing kind of turns another leaf. And so now it's deregulation again. So now you have Reagan. There's a lot of things that goes on with that. Like right when Reagan becomes president, they release the American hostages. Look into it. You know, the old guns, Western kind of thing. You know, oh, Reagan, man, he'll you know he's a loose cannon with those guns, man. Oh shit, now we're afraid of America. Or Jimmy Carter, let's say we're not afraid of that guy. It's like that kind of America. We're not afraid of that liberal America. I mean, we got our asses kicked in the Vietnam War. That's another thing. Is so after and here's the thing, post that was the crescendo of like, yeah, we're smarter than this. We're not going to go and fight rich man's wars. We're not gonna send our kids to die. And you have people like they were charismatic then. You had like Abby Hoffman, and then you had like the Beatles. All you need is love, and you had like the freedom fighters, the revolution, the '60s, and you know, and then you have this thing with Charles Manson, and you have like this MK Ultra thing where it's like the CIA created Charles Manson, they brainwashed him to go tell people to kill people to end that whole charade, and it worked. And so I'm more prone to believing that than it was just all an accident and he was just working on his own. So if I think all of us believe in some kind of conspiracy theory, whether we know it or not. So you kind of check your brain up, for viruses of bad thoughts. It's like, okay, I got a germ in my head here. Like RFK Jr., he has a bunch of brain worms, man. I'm sorry, that guy is ridden with fucking. His brain is just made of a bunch of brain worms, man. Fuck that guy. And so, you know, I'm sorry. Anyway, so now you have this thing where okay, now it's like we have to stave off this whole socialism, communism thing, and we're gonna bring in like we're gonna have Milton Friedman and trickle down economics, and also with Margaret Thatcher in England, same thing. This right wing kind of deregulation thing happened, and so we sort of like we want to bring down and get rid of the communist colors, the socialist colors, the pleasing the customer. We're going to create the illusion of pleasing the customer, the illusion of them getting more for less. But really, their idea is you're going to get less for more, and that starts with Reagan. A lot of people don't know this. And with Milton Friedman. So you get this class of people that will benefit from that, and they start making like, six figures and more. Like they all this money. It's like, well, and those people I call the middle management. They're paid by people who make like $1 million an hour. These people make like $600 an hour are going to be trying to tell people beneath them who make like minimum wage, you're not going to make more than that an hour, and they're being checked by these guys, middle management, who are being checked by upper management. And then on top of that, then you have the devil way up there. I don't know. Okay. So basically, and all this stuff affects Wall Street. So now when you're more like in favor of like war, that might so like a president, like with George Bush, a president, he was called, like I was listening to a joke by Bill Hicks, and he was called the whip president when he was first made president, and then he and so it's like, and so his favor is down, and it affects stock markets, and then he starts, okay, let's kick ass, let's roll, and then you see him like, let's roll, because now we have to go and take out what it's the Al Qaeda, is it? After 9/11, and oh, now his approval rating went up, and it affected the stock market. Like, oh, people got made money from that shit. We're off to war, America. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so as even if you wind up losing a skirmish, the people who started all that in the first place, they walk away with a lot more money than before. Meanwhile, the people beneath them, they might lose their homes. They might, by 2008, you saw what happened. A lot of people lost their homes. That's a result of the deregulation of everything. And the Democrats were partly, uh, responsible for that. Like, because so like George Bush continued the type of deregulation that was put in place by Clinton. Like Clinton, remember I talked about the Bank Act of 1933? Well, Clinton got rid of that. He repealed that. And so George Bush sort of like rolled that into his, you know, economic model or plan. And, you know, by the time Obama first made president, that shit hit the fan. And then so, but Obama didn't help much. I mean, he didn't like penalize anybody who was responsible. He gave them all sorts of money. Look into the details of that. And so it's like, fuck, man. And Obama, he silenced the 99% occupiers of Wall Street. That was during his watch. So you gotta really, you know, and I think a lot of this stuff is staged because it creates division. Well, the Democrats are the devil. No, the Republicans are the devil. And you have us fighting with each other. Now it's so polarized, you just can't stand it. And so again, it's this this thing between communism and capitalism, fascism. So you have socialism and capitalism, communism and against fascism. Fascism. That's what all this is. And the stock market goes up and down accordingly. And so now the fascist type capitalists are taking over. They're the ones that are making bank. They're the ones that are so popular. That's why Trump was president twice. The Democrats couldn't get in on it edgewise. Hillary Clinton, no. Bernie Sanders, even the Democrats were like, no, because he was telling the truth. You can't tell the truth and win. Okay, people, understand that. You cannot tell the truth and win. If you tell the truth, you ain't gonna have any friends left. Your breath kind of smells. You look fat in that dress. Um, you shouldn't eat all that red meat. You shouldn't eat meat at all. Don't eat anything with a face. You ain't gonna have too many friends. You can't tell the truth. You can't say, you know, uh, money is bad. Well, then no one's gonna like you. So think about it. You have to tell a lie to become popular in this world, and that's how you make it in this world is by lying. And that's a whole nother thing to talk about. So I just wanted to talk about this, like with the money that you can make in investing, and ultimately it's because of the struggle between socialism and capitalism. And so if you look at what's happening in Iran and with Ukraine, with China and Russia, I think that the stuff with Iran, by taking out Iran, it strengthens our resolve against Russia, and it keeps China in check, where they're attached to us and they need us. And if Iran prevails, it weakens our hegemon of the Middle East, and it strengthens the incentive to get rid of the dollar as the global standard. That's a whole that, and that's what it's all about. So ultimately, it's about that, like keeping the dollar as the global standard. And so by doing that, to do that, you gotta control Iran, you gotta control Russia and China and all that. But I think the underpinning thing is more like a yin and yang thing. Capitalism or socialism, I mean capitalism or fascism versus socialism or communism. And it's like this yin and yang thing. And it's dynamics of because you always have to have two things to create action or movement. And that goes all the way down to like the subatomic level. You have to have electrons and protons. You can't just have a bunch of electrons. You got to have like this and then like that. It's like magnets, positive and negative charge. And you always have to have that in nature. And I think that's how you create movement. And I wonder if that's what you create time with, or the time in this dimension create that. That's a fundamental thing to look at. And you have space and time. Those are two things, right? And then Einstein's, well, those are two parts of the same coin. Yeah, I get that, the same coin. So, and so, well, yin and yang, it's like it's two parts of a circle, two halves of a circle, right? So it's a dynamic thing or dynamic flow between socialism communism versus capitalism, fascism. And this very thing is animating or stimulating the stock market. And so why this is an interesting, if not important, is because like right now you have more right wing governments popping up. And so with that in favor, you could go to extremes and make popular decisions that are completely like capitalist and right wing type thing. And so you could take an endangered species and wipe them out, but hey, it's good for the economy. But over here, these other guys, yeah, that's the yang. The yin is like, well, no, 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 we don't want to do that. We don't want to sell that island to, you know, to who is that guy, Jared and Ivanka or whatever? They want to make this island into like a resort. So like that's not in favor. What's in favor is them getting to do it because the very government is letting them do it, and they're actually starting to build. Last night, somebody caught me up to the current events, and they said nope, they stopped it. So that's an idea that protests can change the course of our government's decision making. It could probably, so you can't completely say we're completely lost. And I'm trying to unpack this. So the idea is that yeah, it's this dynamic struggle between these two, this yin and yang kind of thing, communism versus capitalism or whatever. And so it could create, if enough people are protesting, what becomes in favor is more socialist type activities, mechanisms to be instituted. And it's like, and then what ultimately the corporate sector will have to abide because the investors will be only investing in companies that seem to be in favor of certain services that go to the winning hand. And the winning hand now, I still think, is right wing, not left wing, in the traditional classic sense. So the traditional classic sense of a liberal socialist would be like, we don't want war in Vietnam. Um, we want more art programs. We want, freer healthcare and freer education. And we want to, change our gender. If a guy wants to wear a dress, whatever, so like that's the kind of stuff we want. And we don't think that churches should not have to pay taxes. They should have to pay taxes. Yeah. Well, why do you think we're at where we're at? The religious Christian sector here are the reasons why people like Richard Nixon won, George Bush won, Reagan won, and Donald Trump won. And they do not want to be taxed. But I'm sorry, if you're going like this, bah, 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 and you're making money off that, that money should be taxed. So so what's in favor is the thing that Frank Zappa warned us against, and we are there. We have this like religious theocracy that's running the show, and now they got rid of the Board of Education, and now they in certain southern states, including Texas, I think they want to have like public schools, teaching the Bible. I think that's a new thing that's happening coming down the pipe, and if you behave a certain way, you're going to be labeled a terrorist, Antifa, you know. And okay, now let's look at ICE. So, like ICE, I think is being taught by Israel, and I think the cop that put his hands and knee on George Floyd, I think he was taught by the IDF. So I think these people, Mossad slash IDF or whatever, I think they're being taught. So now the United States is going to be merging their military with Israel in terms of certain kinds of ideal ideas and information, like weapons information. But I think that you're going to have more people from Israel over here teaching our military, and vice versa, us giving them technology, and state police departments are going to probably be taught by Israeli soldiers how to apprehend people. And I think ICE, instead of it breaking apart, they might become more strong. They're more in cohesion and incentives from Israel to like, the top from Israel, like to really, hold down the man, the masses. And so they're first are going after the immigrants, but then they're gonna start going after you. And this stuff is all right wing shit, and this is what people invest in. Elon Musk is one of them, and he's a trillionaire. He's the first trillionaire. That's why I think that we're still in their pocket. If Elon Musk did not make trillionaire, and people still were like angry at him, and they're still blowing up his fucking cars and that truck, that looks like a driving receptacle, a driving fucking moving garbage can, that Cybertruck or whatever it is. It's like, well, like, that's like a good, to me, those are good signs that, the whole eat the rich thing, like, so like Steve Tyler, eat the rich, like they, I mean, I grew up with that mindset. He's older. He's like my age, it's like, so it's like the idea is that eat the rich, eat the rich. But now it's like, I want to be eaten by the rich, hopefully, because I'll become rich. A lot of people still act like temporarily embarrassed billionaires. And so until me, you, all of us realize, no, we're like the proletariat class, and so we're being effed up the ass. We could we could turn this monkey around, and then so what happens is a more of a socialist type incentive might be in favor, and then companies will have to work in concert with that to get investors to invest in them. And so it's the investors that, if they're like, no, I don't want to invest in that Trump thing or that Elon Musk thing because it's too right wing. And look what we're doing in Iran. It's wrong. We invaded Venezuela. That was wrong. We're trying to kill Cuba. We're strangling Cuba economically. We're trying to kill. People are dying because of what we're doing to that. So when we are hopefully on a global scale, when we're looked at, we're seen as the villain of the story, and then that could affect Wall Street, and then investors will then have to jump ship and go in favor of, like, say, more like the kind of the New Deal kind of shit that was global. Like the whole world saw the United States flourish because of FDR New Deal policies, and I think Europe took that, and eventually China wanted to get a little piece of that. Um, and but now that all that stuff's gone, and so it's all like deregulation again, and it's all like this regimented kind of like, and religion's right in the middle of it, and it's all fascist. Like, we have the ISIS, like the SS, Trump's SS, the staff guard for this guy. So we're still hot in that mess. We're still in the middle of that hot mess that stinks like shit. And and that's incentivized by Wall Street. So if you are like, for instance, corporations, like big CEO companies, like, for them to crack down on employees and to downsize the work, the they downsize the workforce, and they restructure the mechanisms of how that company uh, produces. Like, it's like, so they have streamlined. There's buzzwords for what they're doing. So you have a company that has, like, say, 500 workers. This company is now going to be bought out by a private equity firm. They're going to come in, they're going to remodel everything to make it look brand new, and like better bathrooms, better toilets, better desks, better counters, better walls, and all that. But the workforce is cut more than in half. And you have like algorithms and AI to do the work of what used to be people. But what happens is, on the customer's end, the average person now, 24-hour phone service is cut down to like, you know, like, you know, 7 in the morning till like 8 at night or whatever, 9 to 5 kind of thing. Office hours are like cut in half. And that's to maximize the profits of the investors. And this has happened. It's happening with, like, my bank, my bank, Chase Bank. They used to have 24/7 phone service. I looked it up, and I had to keep on asking AI. Like I use Chat GPT chat, and I kept on, and it kept on like avoiding, like no, but why? I kept on asking it why. Ultimately, it said ultimately the reason why the hours have been cut in half is to satisfy the investors. And so that's going on across the board for everything, including your health services. Everything. Even Denny's is experiencing that, and all these things. And so that's that's where we're at. And until that's challenged, this whole yin and yang thing between socialism versus capitalism, the capitalists are still they are still ruling supreme. And the deregulated kind of capitalism is ruling supreme. We're still stuck in this. And another proof of that is more commercials are being shat out at you. Like on YouTube, they have commercials within commercials. And so these little things become weeds, and now you're being suffocated by all these weeds. And so like you can make a lot of money if you say I'm going to start a war with Iran. You can make a lot of money in because of your and it's not even insider. Well, it isn't inside trading. Like if you hear Trump talk, you know well, it kind of is, because if you know that he's going to say such and such a thing against Iran a day before, you can buy or sell your stocks accordingly. And then he go out and does it, and then wow, all this money comes to you. So that to me is considered insider trading. And how these politicians, they go in with 500,000 and they walk out with like 100 million. Come on, man. So this is where we're at. This is what's happening, and so somehow this has got to be understood at the ground level.